Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode, and I'm absolutely thrilled today to have three ladies with Kerr Together. And they include Theresa Metcalf, Kathy Hagemeier, and Judy Eychner. Ladies, first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for coming down and visit with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Good to be here.
But I want to start with an observation. I moved here in 2021, and one of the things that struck me about the way Kerrville is run is certainly there's a city government and employees who work for the city, but in many ways it's a partnership between the citizens of Kerrville, the businesses in Kerrville, public and private, and the city. And this group of women today and what you guys are doing seems to me to exemplify that as well as anything I have seen. So I first wanted to start with, would you care to comment on my observation? And is that something that you have either seen, experienced? And Judy, since you've been in both realms, I'll start with you.
Absolutely. There are so many, let me start with the city. There are so many partnerships that the city has. And the city gets a bad rap all the time. And that's just because they're government. So that it happens. But in our case, here in Kerrville, it's unusual, I think. And it's good. It's very good. The city gets criticized, but we work with so many different groups around that things are good, despite the criticism that is always there, and it's going to be there. But yes, partnerships, working together is super here.
And Kathy, could I ask you, first of all, tell us your role with the city, but how do you work with local businesses or private enterprises in your role?
Yeah, so Kelly Hagemeier, Economic Development Manager for the City of Kerrville. And my position in the way that it is now is fairly new. I actually moved into this position end of May 2025, so just this year. And so we had noticed, or the city administration had noticed, that there was definitely a gap in us in the government having a pulse of where small businesses were, who was coming in, who was struggling, and how important it was for us to have a better understanding of what was going on with our small businesses. And so that's whenever my position came around. And then at the same time, Todd Bach with Kerr EDC came on board for us to start working together. He and Theresa working on larger projects, primary jobs, and then me internally within the city, talking with small businesses. What do they need? How can we help? Are there grant opportunities? Updating infrastructure, all of those things. It's been a really great partnership, not just with KEDC, but also speaking with our small businesses and having those one-on-one talks.
And Theresa, could you tell us your current position and what your job entails?
Sure. So Theresa Metcalf, Kerr EDC, and I am the Deputy Director. And I would say that really Kerr EDC as an organization exemplifies the example that you gave. We are a now 11 member board, and we have both elected officials and city and county representatives, but we also pull together business representatives from the community, our local independent school district representatives. And so it really cultivates a great conversation and working collaboratively across the entire community to advance economic development.
And then could I transition over to the role you three are helping lead in the economic recovery from the July 4th flood? And I'll just stick with you, Theresa.
Oh, okay. So early on, as we were working through disaster response, it was brought to our attention that our community needed to form a long-term recovery group to address kind of the midterm to long-term tasks and things that we were going to have to do as we transition from the different phases of disaster. And so there was a group of us that had started meeting very early on after July 4th. It was a task force that Judy started bringing together in, I think it started with how many, Judy? 8 people at first.
About that,
Well,
yes.
I think 4 people at first and then 8 people. And I say then it went
growing.
to 15 and then it went to 30. And then at one point in time before we had our formalized board, I think we were up to 65 people on that invitation.
Yes.
So it was a process to get to where we are today. I think Judy should talk about what the board is now and kind of how we really formalize that. but it really was a community driven effort to bring a lot of voices to the table to work on a whole bunch of different things that were not only affected by the flood, but what we look at long term and how we approach this disaster and every other crisis or disaster moving forward.
Judy, let's then transition over to you. What gap or need did you see, and how are you able to bring these people that are here today and the others who are on your board with you to help get us through this next period?
Asking was all we needed to do, was to ask people. But it started out because for me, there were lots and lots of groups all over our county, from the one end to the other along the river, doing all kinds of things, taking care of people, taking care of whatever needed to be taken care of in light of that disaster. And for me, Kerr Together, coming together, has been trying to bring as many of those groups as we can working together, knowing what is going on. Because what was happening in Comfort, there were similar things happening in Hunt. But nobody really knew what was going on. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there just wasn't any organization to it. And so Kerr Together, coming together as it has brought those groups together so that we are able to join together in our efforts, join together in the materials that we need, join together, just coming together to handle everything. The other thing that I saw was that because we had Hunt and then we had Comfort, there's a long way between those two physically, and when you're trying to help people. And so this has been able to bring the two ends of the county together and bring people with the same interests together to help make things better. And we're covering all kinds of things. It's there. We've got 16 smaller committees. As we said, we started out with about 4, we expanded to 8, and that number just kept expanding because people wanted to be a part of helping. And so we now have 16 committees. They all have a chairman and a vice chairman. And then out of those 16 committees, we have, is it 8 or 7 that we have on our board of directors? It's 7, right?
It's 9, including
it's
yourself.
9. Okay,
so it's,
9.
It's 8
Okay.
board,
We were
8
going to
board
be
representatives
7.
from the working
That's right.
group, and then Judy as the chair.
Yeah. And so we've got, golly, altogether, how many people do we have? I don't know if we've added it all up together.
No, yeah.
Yeah, it's super because all of these smaller committees have people from all over the county, from both ends, coming together to make things better for everybody.
Kelly, if I could ask you, what is, or how do you see your role? What committees might you be on? And do you really try to bring a city perspective or a city voice to all of this, plus your own personal experiences?
So I was with Theresa and Todd and Judy and Mindy on the first day, or on day 3 or something, just kind of talking about, okay, what are the next steps? How do we how do we figure out what the needs are within the community? So it was very broad. And now, as we said, we're down to our 16 working groups, and I sit on the business recovery one, and I am the chair of economic development. And so for me, even though that my position is specifically with the city, whatever is going on in the county, whether it be Comfort or in Hunt or Ingram, all of that is going to affect what the economic development and growth will be for Kerrville, and kind of what the needs, necessities, just so that people we're a destination, and so that we're a place where people want to come. And whether it's the camps, whether it's people going to the Point Theater in Ingram, whether it's people dining in Center Point or going and shopping in Comfort, all of that, it's all a synergy that we need, because we can be our own destination amongst our 5 communities. And I'm looking at it from the aspect of Kerrville and Kerrville development, but also our full community needs. because we're all family in the end. Everyone knows someone who lives in Comfort, Center Point, Kerrville, Ingram, Hunt. We all know somebody. So it's all family.
So can I ask about some of the initiatives you're at least discussing at this point? One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is, do we have the opportunity to reimagine Kerrville in a way that we didn't previously, or should we reimagine Kerrville? Should we take it back to the way it was, if that's even possible? What are some of the initiatives you're at least thinking about or maybe talking through at this point that you could share with us?
So one of the cool things, excuse me, about those working groups is that they were kind of the focus of those working groups came from grassroots efforts that were already happening. So people that were organically convening and saying, hey, this is a passion of mine. This is something that I feel is really important. I want to have impact on this specific area. And so, of course, really early on, the River group began, and that kind of started coming together with Jeremy Walther and Sansenberg Farm and Hill Country Alliance and some other representatives that started to pull together conversations about riparian efforts with the river. How do we be good stewards of the river? How do we ensure that we're not doing damage while we still have to work with debris management and debris removal? But what does it look like to focus on the river and to put forth that effort to repair it, but then also maybe reimagine specific aspects across the entire Guadalupe River? And so again, that group is an extremely large group from all across the Guadalupe River. They're doing some really incredible things. Out of that came another group that is focused on the flood warning system. But the river group specifically, we just had a meeting to talk about non-woody species seeding as an effort to prevent further erosion. We have a lot of just bare dirt. And so the effort of not only capturing the seeds, so going out and collecting seeds from the trees that were along that area to replant when it's planting season, but also planting additional seeds for very specific types of non-woody species to help again with the erosion and regrow that area. So that's just one of many conversations that are happening and one of many projects that will come to the board of directors and talk about what is needed to push those projects forward, where the collaboration comes in, how do we fund projects like this? So that's just one of many. But that was a pretty big one in one of the most recent conversations.
Judy, what about where you see these conversations? Are we able to reimagine things in a way we couldn't, or is it something different?
I think it's a little soon to begin to reimagine. I think we don't drive across a bridge, but we don't see what happened. And immediately we think back to what it was. And it's going to take a while before we really begin to do a lot of reimagining. Right now, we're still in the how do we rebuild? How do we get our businesses going again? And that's part of reimagining. But I think what you're referring to is maybe a little further out than that. But that's part of what these 16 committees are going to be doing. They're looking at what's going on right now. What do we need to do? And out of that will come some of that reimagining, what our community, and there's different ways of looking at reimagining. It's the physical river, as it doesn't quite run like it did before. But then it's our businesses, making sure that they're open and people are utilizing those businesses again. And then it's all of our individual houses, all the people who lost their homes. How is that going to look? And that gets really complicated because we've got floodplain and flood lines and where we can build and how we can build and what we can build. That's a whole nother part. And that will come as we move down the road. That will become more apparent. But so yes, we are reimagining, but at the same time, we've got to take care of what's going on right now. And that's where our efforts really are.
Kelly, if I could ask you, I saw multiple groups form starting on the morning of July 4th, literally in the afternoon of the 4th, the next day on the 5th, the next day on the 6th. And the group that we're here talking about today, sort of coalescing, how are you able to bring the passion that you had to this group that in a way that you can move it forward? First of all, I guess I'm trying to ask, how did you guys get so organized so quickly? Number one. And then two, what are some of the things you're passionate about now that you're really trying to help on?
Oh gosh, that was, there's a lot of ways to answer that question. July 4th was one of those days where I think just the right people were in the right place at the right time. And my day started with helping with trying to organize the shelters and getting the camps in most need into a safe space and reunited with their parents. And from that just kind of came, personally, I just became like the random question person. Like anyone who had the most random question, they came to me and I just said, let me figure that out. And then we had conversations about, very quickly, we realized that people were trying to communicate with the Kerrville community to figure out how they could assist. So it actually, this effort really started with us just trying to organize volunteers. And then we realized that correct information was something that needed to get out very quickly. And we needed to have additional sources that weren't just from the city's Facebook page or from the county's Facebook page. We needed a community effort that kind of was that second layer of, yes, this is true information that you can trust. And we just needed to get that ball rolling. And Theresa at the time had said, during COVID, we had set up a website called Kerr Together, or it was called, I think, Kerrville Together.
Kerrville Together.
Kerrville Together. And we said, that sounds like the easiest path forward. Let's just get that back up and running and call it Kerr Together instead. Theresa can kind of tell you more about this. She and Ashley Bach, Todd Bach's daughter, they were amazing working on the back end of trying to organize people, running to get this website up and running. So it was pretty amazing.
Yeah. So we had already started that website on the back end of things. And then when Judy hosted the first Kerr Together, then it was the Kerr Together task force. And they started talking about, okay, how do we centralize communication? We kind of just said, oh, here's another part of that communication and being able to work together. And so that was, we had a great model from the last time we went through a crisis for a community. And it was an easy path forward. And then it was a very collaborative effort to pull all of that information, keep it vetted, update it. In the early stages, that website was getting updated almost on a minute by minute basis because information changed that quickly. Now it's a little bit more stagnant, and the long-term recovery group is working with a PR agency to kind of take that website and make it a bigger platform, a little bit easier to manage, and to provide a great story for our community and as a long-standing resource for the community to both educate about disaster phases and kind of where we are now and what we're going to be looking at in the future, but also as a way for people together to get connected with the different working groups and the different initiatives as we move forward.
Judy, I want to call upon you again because you have been both in private business and in the public service work. One of my observations has been, and you three are certainly within this observation, that everything you have done in your life before July 4th put you in this place to respond. And I've said that to several other people, and I'll say that to you all. But Judy, I want to specifically ask you about, as I mentioned, I came from Houston, and if there was a disaster, we had professionals in the city government who stepped up and took the lead. But here I saw just regular people stepping up to take the lead and regular people being a part of Kerr Together. And I was wondering if you could say a few words about really the resiliency of not simply the community of Kerrville, but the people seeing that it truly was a disaster. And I would call them a hero, but they were just also regular people.
They were regular people doing the unimaginable. And it's been so beautiful to see. This community is absolutely outstanding, just outstanding. And you hear the stories you hear of people who would never have done anything in a normal way, reaching out to other people doing things that they would never imagine that they could do. And it's just been absolutely wonderful to see. I don't think you would see this in Houston and Dallas and big cities like that. And people do respond. They do respond when needed, but this community responds in ways that others would not have. Our first responders, absolutely wonderful, but just recently, a conversation with one of the school bus drivers. They'd been called in. They were out there bringing people, loads of school buses, dealing with all those people who had been involved in the water, dealing with what they were feeling, but wanting to get them on the bus, bring them in, things that they would never, ever have expected to be doing. And the stories don't stop. They don't stop. And we are just in such a blessed and awesome community.
Unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this. So before we leave, I wanted to ask if any of our listeners wanted to find out more about Kerr Together or Connect or volunteer or offer services or donations, what would be the best places for them to go?
Kerr Together website is one. These gals will be available by phone.
My cell phone number is out there everywhere now.
Yes. And call the Kerr Economic Development Office. Kelly's at City Hall, and my cell phone's all over the world, so that's fine. But I think the website is probably one of the very, very first places to start.
Is that kerrconnect.org?
It's kerrtogether.com.
Kerrtogether.com.
Yes,
.com. Kerrtogether.com.
Yes,
We'll put
yes.
that in the show notes.
yes.
Thank you all for coming down, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
We'd love to. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right.